I'll continue to admit people from the waiting room if they do join, but we will get started now. First of all, just thank you for joining us. We did feel it would be better to host this as an online meeting, just so that as many of you really as possible can join, and so you can hear the information about the SATS evening. Some of you may be watching this after the fact. We are recording it, so if you know of any parents that weren't able to join, just let them know that they will get the recording of the meeting and they can watch it all again afterwards at any time. So the SATs are coming up, as you know, and we always do this presentation before the SATs, really just so that you can feel well informed, you know what's going to happen, so that you've got the chance to ask any questions, or just let us know if there's anything you want to have any answers on, and we can do that for you. And then we go into the week feeling happy and ready. I will say the children have been fantastic this year. They worked so hard in preparation with their learning, and it's not all about the SAT. It's about readiness for secondary school. It's about enjoying their learning, but obviously the children do want to do as well as they can, and so we really do try and help them to feel ready and prepared. I can tell you from having been in the classrooms regularly throughout the year, they are ready and prepared, and however they do, they will do themselves proud, and we'll be proud of them regardless. I have Mrs. Ayling and Miss Curtin here, and I'm very grateful for their time. They're going to present to you on some of the things that you need to know. If at any point you have a question, please could I ask that you pop it in the chat function. I will keep an eye on the chat, and I will interject with any questions as we go through, or we will answer them at the end if that's more appropriate. We are recording the session, so if you'd rather not have your video as part of the recording, feel free to turn off your video, and I will ask everyone to remain on mute just so that everyone can hear what's being said throughout the presentation. Okay, that's it from me for now. I'll pass over to Mrs. Ayling and Miss Curtin, who can tell you more.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So this is the Year 6 SATS 2023 presentation for parents, carers and guardians. So what are the SATs? Now, some of you may have had siblings already go through the process, this might be new to some of you. So SATs are the standardised assessments that the children take at the end of Key Stage 2, which are testing them on the knowledge that they've ascertained from Year 3 to Year 6. So it's not just the learning of Year 6, it's Year 3, Year 4, Year 5 and Year 6. They take place over 4 days, and this year, due to the King's coronation, we're starting on Tuesday the 9th of May, and then we're ending on Friday the 12th of May. The SATS papers consist of the grammar, punctuation and spelling, the reading, and then we have 3 different maths papers. So on the Tuesday, we sit the grammar paper first, and then we sit a spelling paper afterwards. And then on the Wednesday, we sit a reading paper. And then Thursday's a bit of a hefty day, I'd probably say the heaviest, where we sit an arithmetic paper, which is 30 minutes, and then a reasoning paper, which is 40 minutes. And then on the Friday, sorry, I get my dates mixed up because of the coronation, it's pushed everything on a day. And then on the Friday, we've got the last reasoning paper, and then we can all breathe. But obviously we do have writing that is assessed as well. But over the year, myself and Mrs. Ayling, we build up lots of evidence to our super rights. And at the end of the year, that's actually teacher assessed. And then on occasions, depending on where you fall in the process, you may then get an external moderation from the STA, Standards Testing Agency. So the Key Stage 2 test will be taken on the set dates, and this can't be sort of changed and moved around. It's not our choice. The government set those dates and we have to adhere to them. However, if your child is ill or absent for extreme circumstances, then they can take them, but they have to take them within 5 days. And there are certain rules and regulations that we have to follow around socialisation with other children that have already sat them. But they are, it doesn't happen very often, let's put it that way. So when and how are the SATs completed? So they take place during normal school day. So they're normally done by about 11 o'clock. We get them in early. We have breakfast in school, which again is a choice. Your children don't have to, but it's always nice to sit down, calm everybody down, make sure everybody's here. They've all had a good breakfast, they're fed, they're watered, and they're ready and focused to try their best and do their best. Children are not allowed to talk to each other during the exam, and it is done under proper exam conditions. After the tests are completed, the papers are sent away externally to be marked, and until they are collected from school, they are ticked off, they are bagged, they are sealed, and they are put in a secure location, which is locked. The results are then sent to the school in July, and you will receive these results in the end of year reports. There'll be a separate page in there. which will tell you the scores that your children have got. Each test does not last any longer than 60 minutes. The reading is the longest test, which is 60 minutes. The punctuation and grammar is a 45-minute test, and then we do a spelling paper after that, which doesn't actually have an allotted time. However, I would say it normally takes between 15 and 20 minutes. Then the reading paper, like I said, is 60 minutes. That's our longest test. And then you've got the arithmetic paper, which is 30 minutes, and then the 2 reasoning papers, which are 40 minutes. So there are specific arrangements for SATS to ensure that all children have the provision in place to succeed, but that provision that's put in place has to be a similar support as part of their day-to-day learning. And this is applied for via the Primary Assessment Gateway, which myself, Mr. Tuck and Mrs. Ayling all have a part in. Children can be given extra time. Some tests can be opened early, so they can be modified, either put onto coloured paper to be enlarged. Sometimes children need to have a scribe for them to access the paper, so the scribe can write for them. The use of word processors, we can use an adult to read and translate, use of prompts or rest breaks for children that find concentrating a little bit more difficult. But all of these arrangements are sorted and chosen. The children are chosen by us, and we will talk to any parents that this may link to. But pupils with an EHCP, which is an educational healthcare plan, they are automatically allowed 25% additional time. But we will be contacting parents if any of the specific arrangements for the SATS links to your child. So the way that we are going to run it this year, it will be run in a wave approach. And this is to make sure that there's suitable provision for all of the children at Grovelands. So we will have a wave 1, where a wave of children will go through the test as a wave 1. And then once those children have finished, we will then have a wave 2 set of children go through the same test. So 9 AM will be a start for wave 1. So making sure we're in school early and on time is really, really important. And then the second wave will start about 10:30, depending on what test it is that we're taking on that day. Breakfast will be in the main hall like we do every year. This is a really lovely opportunity for the children to get to school early, be calm, eat breakfast with their friends. We're normally graced with some lovely weather. And if so, we pop the tables outside and we sit in the sunshine, and there'll be croissants and brioche and cereal and fruit juice and water and milk and things like that for them to enjoy. Then we will go and take the tests, and that'll be in a wave approach, like I just explained. And then after they finish the test, we will do an element of revision ready for the next day. It would be silly not to. However, we do also have lots of downtime, some sporting activities, some chill time, and just to sort of a congratulations. You got through the first day, you've got through the second day, a bit of a countdown, because I'm sure they're all going to be very pleased when they're over. If your child does attend Breakfast Club, that is completely fine. The Breakfast Club ladies will bring them across to the main hall when the breakfast time starts for the SATS. So the results are marked externally, like I mentioned earlier, and once marked, the test will be given the following scores. So there'll be a raw score, and this is how many marks your child has achieved out of the paper. For example, if the paper is out of 40, they scored 32 out of 40. However, this is then converted to a scaled score. Now, the government have 3 different levels. They have a working towards the expected standard, they have working at the expected standard, and they have working above at a greater depth within the expected standard. And this scaled score links to those 3 different judgments. So the scaled score of 100 means that your child is meeting the national standard. So the magic 100, it's sort of been nicknamed. And then 110 is greater depth, working at a sort of a mastery level within that subject. So that's the judgment on if the national standard has been met. But it will all be really clear on the piece of paper you get in the reports at the end of the year. So the first test they sit is the grammar, the punctuation, and spelling. This is on Tuesday, the 9th of May. The first paper focuses on all 3 elements, grammar, punctuation, and spelling, and the paper lasts for 45 minutes. And then the paper 2 consists of just the spelling, and it is simply reading out a word, reading out the sentence that the word fits, that the sentence that the word fits into, and then repeating the word again. And there are 20 spellings, and the children are given as much time as they need, and the spellings can be repeated as many times as needed to ensure that everyone has heard them properly and has been given the best opportunity to get them correct. So the grammar, the punctuation, the spelling, the children will have been working really hard, and I can vouch for that. And I'm sure Mrs. Ailing can as well. There's a lot of content in terms of the grammar. And this test focuses on grammatical terms and word classes, functions of sentences, combining words, phrases and clauses, verb forms, tenses and consistency, punctuation, vocabulary, and the standard English and formality. And it requires a variety of different test answers. You could have a tick box, you could have a circle the right answer, you could have a write a short answer, you could be linking up, you know, the answer and the question, you could be rewriting a certain answer. So here are some examples for you just to cast your eye across of different ways that the children are asked to answer the questions and some different examples of questions. So I'll just pause just for 10 seconds so you can have a little look. Okay, so paper 2 is the spelling paper. And like I said, it's where we are reading out, for example, the word is dog. It won't be dog, but just for an example, the word is dog. The dog sat in his bed. The word is dog. And that's how we repeat each sentence, all 20. And then they write their answers on the test paper. Again, we go through and we make sure everyone's heard it. We've been doing lots and lots of sounds, right, and spelling teaching all year, and they've got really good strategies because there can be some tricky spellings in this particular test. Here we go. The word is ordering. The children were ordering the objects from the smallest to the largest. The word is ordering. And then you can see it's got the gap in the sentence. So it's within a context, because obviously some words spelled differently, but. Okay, so reading paper, I'd probably say is the heaviest in terms of actual individual paper. And that's because they've got 3 texts. The text can range between 2,000 to 3,000 words, and they've got 60 minutes to read each text and then answer questions linked to the text. So we have one text, and maybe 2 sides of A4, and then we have 15 questions. Another text, different text with 2 sides of A4 with about 15 questions, and then another text with 2 sides of A4 and then 15 questions. And that all needs to be done within an hour. So they're up against it. But like Mr. Tuck said, we have definitely been practicing and they are prepared. And I think actually as a year group, reading and as a school is really, really strong. So this test is designed to measure if the children's comprehension is of an age appropriate level. And there are 3 different set texts for children to read, and these could be any combination of non-fiction, fiction, and poetry. And you can see here all the different sort of content domains that are covered. I won't read them, but you can cast your eyes over them. You know, we very much use the Vipers, that it's, you know, it's vocabulary, inference, prediction, explaining, retrieval, and summarizing. And they're sort of the main skills that we teach in the classroom to let the children be in the best position to score the highest they can on the paper. So here's some examples. This was last year's paper. It was about the Parsnips, which was a football club. So Veronica's football team has 2 names. What are the 2 names? So the children needed to look. This is the certain part of the information where they would have found the answer. And then you've got an example of the mark scheme here as well. And the mark scheme is particularly precise on what it's asking the children to find out of the text. But again, I mean, I think I've spoken to parents before and they said, oh, I don't think I could do that. You know, these children have practiced and practiced and practiced, and they actually have it for homework, and we do it in the classroom. We do lots of reading, you know, across the curriculum. So they really, they are very, very confident and they're in a good place in terms of reading. And here's another example. Vladik is always changing his Drellian performance. Give 2 ways that these changes to his performance happen. And again, this is part of the text. It would normally be a larger section that they would have to find it in. But for ease of this particular presentation, I've just given you the smaller part. And then again, you've got the mark scheme. So there are sometimes more than one, you know, opportunity to get the right answer. But again, you know, you have to be precise. If it says find and copy 1 word, it wants 1 word. If it means find and copy a phrase, it wants a phrase. And if you haven't copied it from the text and you've made this, you know, even added 1 word, it's incorrect. So it's not only understanding comprehension and language and all those other skills I mentioned earlier, but it's also understanding test technique as well. And another example, which is a 3-mark question, a little bit longer. So what impression do you get of Penelope as she describes her unusual experience? They need to give the impression and then find evidence from the text to support that answer. And again, you've got the mark scheme. So there's lots of different opportunities for them to gain the mark, but they have to be precise and they have to explain and they have to also use evidence from the text to support that explanation. So there's a lot going on in an hour for them. So since the current testing formation for the SATS began in 2016, there has been a tendency for 3 types of questions to be the most popular. So in the 2022 reading SATS paper, 10% of the marks could be gained from answering questions involving and giving explaining. So it's using that because, making sure they explain what they mean. 38% was gained from retrieval. So that's being the detective, going in and finding the information, retrieving it and popping it in your answer booklet. And then 44% was making inferences. So that's looking beneath the words, using the words as clues and then coming up and, you know, inferring a meaning from those words. So when reading with your child at home, likely it's been the message that Grovelands has been sending for many, many years, but I thought I would just take the opportunity to mention it. When reading with your children at home, try and focus on these type of questions. So could you tell me where in the text it says, or what colour is the dog's collar, or can you tell me why this character might feel sad? Can you show me in the text where what has given you that impression? So try and use those question stems. That would be really, really helpful. So maths, the maths assessments consist of 3 different tests. So on the Thursday, you've got 2 tests. So in terms of amount of tests, this is the heavier day, whereas in terms of the actual test, Wednesday is heavier because the reading is quite hefty. But we have arithmetic, which they love. They do arithmetic every morning. We do like a point scoring system and they get an early lunch and we have team sort of competitions and we will really get involved in the old arithmetic. So they've got 30 minutes, they've got 40 questions. So that's less than a minute per question. And some questions take longer to do and some questions take less. They're all capable of doing this test paper within 30 minutes. So don't let that sort of startle you. And then we move on to the reasoning, which is more problem solving. And that's 40 minutes. And then on the Friday, we do our last paper, which is another reasoning paper. And these 3 papers get added together and it's out of 110. So when you get your report through and you see the paper at the end, the maths, you'll be given 1 score and it will be out of 110 because all 3 papers get added together. So the maths arithmetic paper has a total of 40 marks and it lasts for 30 minutes. And this covers all of the 4 operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, including order of the operations requiring BIDMAS or BODMAS, depending on which one you choose, percentages of amounts, and calculate with decimals and fractions. So there are no words in this paper. It's purely just numbers and calculations, and they fly through it. I think it's becoming a bit of a hobby for some. Here are some examples again, just so you can see. So we've got BODMAS, number 35. We've got a percentage of a number 27, adding decimals. You know, they know they need to line the decimal up for question number 6, using a 0 as a placeholder. And then question 15 is very simple. It's a short multiplication, but they've been a little bit more tricky and they've written it going backwards. So yeah, they're certainly testing them all the time on all different elements of their maths and also their observation skills as well. So reasoning, paper 2 and 3 take place on the Thursday and on the Friday, and these have a total of 35 marks each and last for 40 minutes. These papers require the children to demonstrate mathematical knowledge and skills as well as their ability to solve problems. So they need to actually extract the maths out of the words, which some find easier than others. They can use a highlighter, they can do underlining, and there are other strategies we've taught them in class to make sure they're retrieving the information they really need to get the marks and get the answer correct. Because you've got number and place value, you've got 4 operations again, but in a different context. Geometry, so you've got properties of shape, position, direction. Looking at statistics, so looking at bar charts, pie charts, tables, timetables, rather, not times tables. Measurement, you've got the length, perimeter, math, volume, time, money, algebra. And when you read it all out like this, it sounds like a lot of content, and it is, and we should be totally aware of that, of how hard they've worked, and also how much they have to keep in their heads. Because I think at this point of the year, they're at saturation level because they've actually learned the whole of the Year 6 curriculum by now. So we're now in the process of revisiting and consolidating and really sort of homing in on any gaps in their knowledge that they don't know. So they've learned all of this. And again, reasoning paper is really, really strong. So here are some examples. Emma has a 5-litre bag of compost. She uses 2.7 litres of it. How much compost does Emma have back? So you need to think about your conversions, and then you need to think about your 4 operations. And then in number 7, in a race, Ali completes a swim, a run, and a bicycle ride. So here you're sort of converting and adding, and you need to find out what fraction of the total distance is the bicycle ride. So you need to add those 2 together. Then you've got an isosceles triangle. So not only do they need to remember the properties of an isosceles triangle, but they also need to learn to stand and remember all of their angles facts. And then on number 19, when you square in prime number, the answer only has 2 factors. They need to also know how to put their explanations into words and explain from a mathematical point of view why Jack is not correct. So there's lots going on again in this paper too. So supporting your child and preparing for SATs. Now, firstly, a positive attitude always goes a long way, and we give them as much encouragement and support as we can at school, and I'm sure you guys do at home as well. Tips just for you is don't use past papers at home. We use them in school to prepare the children. We wouldn't want them to have already sat something at home. We'd want them to have fresh eyes on it in school. Do talk to me and Mrs. Ayling if you have any concerns, rather than worry your child and ask them. Our doors are always open. You can grab us on email, which is the Year 6 teacher email. You can ring the school office. We will always ring you back, or you can catch us on the doors in the morning or after school. Always encourage your child to talk to us or any of the TAs about any worries they have. They're very, very natural. And don't forget that a small amount of anxiety is totally normal and it's not harmful. Give your child a quiet, distraction-free space to complete homework or studying. Homework is becoming a little less and less, but it's still coming home. So just to allow them to have that space to complete whatever it is they feel they need to complete. Lots of outdoor time, calm time, reducing screen time. Ensure that everyone's eating, drinking and getting a good amount of sleep, especially on the weekend before SATS week. And just plan something nice and fun for the weekend before, the less pressure, the better. Me and Mrs. Ayling have sung the same song to them from the moment they step through the door, and that is that this is not going to change your life. You are still going to do and be whatever you want to be, regardless of your SAT score. It just would be nice that all of you have worked so hard throughout the year. To sort of fall at the last hurdle would be a shame. So we just want to put them in the best position possible for them to perform the best they can, so they can achieve what we really feel is their potential. So things to remember about SATs. SATs focus on what children know about maths and English. This will not reflect how talented they are at science or geography or art or PE. And it certainly won't highlight all of their amazing personal characteristics. So it is not the be all and end all. It is literally an assessment on their maths and their English. And we must remember the whole child. And this is not a true reflection of the whole child. SATs don't tell the whole story. Their results will say if they did or they didn't meet a certain standard, but not necessarily by what margin. So these thresholds change each year according to the overall national performance. So what was classed as meeting the expected standard last year may not be the same as meeting the expected standard this year. And SATs are only 4 days out of their whole primary school career. And in reality, there's 1 or 2 papers each day that last 30 to 60 minutes. And the rest of the day is used for revision and foundation lessons. So it shouldn't be a massively stressful week. And we really do try our best to keep it really low key, keep it really, really calm, and do lots of nurturing. And, mental health and well-being is the #1 priority in the whole grand scheme of things. So what do you do if you're worried about your child? So SATs often does induce a certain degree of worry, but there is, of course, a tipping point. So SATs anxiety should not affect your child's appetite. It shouldn't affect your child's sleep. It shouldn't affect their personality, induce panic and tears and be disengaged from their learning and be a reason why they shouldn't be coming to school. And, don't get stressed, just do your best. Remember, you've been blessed with skills that SATs can't test. And that's a poem that we send back on the Friday before we break up, because it really is true. All you have to do is try your best. And we've been singing that since the moment they stepped in. Just do your best. You're only in a race with yourself. So if any of the above are evident, and you think that SATs might be causing an excessive degree of anxiety, and you think that your child might benefit from additional support, please come and speak to us about it at the earliest opportunity, because there's lots of things we can put in place to relieve those anxieties and hopefully make them feel happier and not so worried. So advice for your Year 6 children, and I love the first bullet point: listen to your teacher. Yes, listen to us. We do know what we're doing, I promise. The adults you work with, we all want them just to do their best. We want them to get plenty of sleep and eat well, and this will help your brain. I go on about that all the time as well, if there are any children listening. Read all the questions carefully. Don't rush. You have enough time. We want to avoid the silly mistakes, Don't panic, because when you panic, your brain can't send the connections it needs to send, and then we make silly mistakes as well. Take a deep breath, read it again. And in some of the tests, you can always put your hand up and ask an adult to read the question to you. And remember that the Year 6 SATs last for 4 days out of your whole life. So stay focused and just enjoy the ride. Enjoy all that hard work will pay off in the end. And a Year 7 pupil that I contacted through Rivers and asked if any of them would like to make a comment. And they said, stay focused in class so you don't have loads of extra studying to do at home. So I just thought that was a nice little touch. So yeah, that's the end of the presentation. If there are any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to either unmute yourself and ask directly on here, or Mr. Tuck. I don't know if anyone's written anything in the chat, but I hope we've covered most of what you guys would want to know. If there's any questions, yeah, throw them at me and I'll do my best to answer. And if I can't answer, then I will find the answer and get back to you.
Okay, Ms. Curtin, I can only suggest that your presentation was so thorough that you've answered all of the questions that anyone may have had. And it really was a fantastic presentation. I think you covered absolutely everything, and I sort of sat back and listened and just thought how fantastic you are. So really, really well done to Ms. Curtin and also to Mrs. Ayling for the presentation, but also for the hard work that I know that you put in this year to get them to the point where they're ready for their SATs in a few weeks' time. We can all enjoy the King's coronation on the Saturday, the bank holiday on the Monday, and then come in ready on the Tuesday to do our best. Thank you very much to all of you for joining. We hope that's been really useful, but don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any further questions. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.